So this leaves me to introduce our wonderful speaker for tonight. We are joined by Professor Iris Asllani. Professor Asllani earned her degree in theoretical nuclear physics from the University of Tirana. A two-time Fulbright scholar, she completed her master's in microscopy and PhD in magnetic resonance spectroscopy in bioengineering at the University of Washington. She then spent a decade at Columbia University, where she led the development of the arterial spin labeling program. Professor Asllani currently holds dual faculty appointments in neuroscience at the University of Sussex, UK, and in biomedical engineering at the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, where she teaches novel neuroimaging methods and biomechanics. Her primary research focus is physiological imaging using MRI, with recent expansion into multi-modal neuroimaging for comprehensive assessments of brain metabolism. In addition to her research and teaching roles, Professor Asllani serves as a Vice Chair and Chair of the Advisory Board for the Consortium for Advancement of MRI Education and Research in Africa, and she is a Faculty Advisor for Engineering World Health. So Iris, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and over to you.
Thank you. And can I share this? Will I be able to share? Let's see. Yes. Okay.
Brilliant. We can see that, Iris. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's a bit strange to give a lecture. I'm so used to seeing people and get some feedback from body language. So I hope this goes well. This is a lecture told in pictures. I thought it would be nice to show you a story, starting with my background, with what we're doing and how we're actually broadening clinical and research impact across the globe. I put there my email because certain things I may go through very quickly. I may not go into the depth that you might want. There might be questions that we may not be able to answer today for time or other reasons. So please feel free to send me an email. You can come on campus to visit our center, to talk to me about ideas and any other things that might come to your mind as you watch this lecture. So as I said, this is a story told in pictures. I will start with, as Agatha mentioned, I grew up in Albania, which for some of you may not know, was one of the harshest dictatorships in the Eastern Bloc during the Cold War. And my claim to fame is that I got the first visa ever granted to an Albania to go to the United States. And my visa number was 000001, and it confused the immigration officers because I had never seen a first person from a country. And my first trip was with Peace Corps. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Peace Corps. It's an organization from the US government that basically sends expertise across the globe, people to Americans, usually young Americans, but actually that's not completely the case, where they go in different countries and they either been teaching English or some engineering, math, physics. So the picture that you see here, it's actually me many, many years ago, more than 30 years ago, when we welcomed the first group of Peace Corps volunteers in Albania. And I show this picture because you could see this lady. She was in her late 80s. And she came because she wanted to help. And she started teaching English in a remote village in Albania. And it sort of followed me along because this is a close friend of mine. We went to graduate school together. He actually went to Kenya with Peace Corps, and he did that half the way through his PhD. He just thought he needed something to have more meaning, I suppose, than the daily research, and he joined Peace Corps. So from there, and I will go through other steps of my career, but from there, I started to work with Engineering World Health as a faculty advisor. This is when I was teaching at the University of Rochester, at Rochester Institute of Technology, and the whole part of the Engineering World Health was inspired by students who actually came to my office and said, listen, you are an international person, you have taught in different places. Can we build an engineering World Health chapter on campus? And through that chapter, we actually went to Guatemala, Rwanda, Nepal, Tanzania, and most of the pictures that I will show you, for example, on this slide are from Guatemala. And the reason I'm showing these pictures are it's very difficult to get a sense of what a hospital means outside the global north. So this is an ultrasound that it's not working, and there is not even a support in terms of manuals. So any of the engineers there can read unless they speak English, which many of them didn't, or read English. This is an infant warmer. No, what was this? I can't remember, but you can see that it says it doesn't function. And this is, again, equipment. And many of you may have heard that many companies send this equipment when they don't work well. They basically, many of the low middle income countries have become, for a lack of a better word, a dumping place for equipment that doesn't work, and they get zero support. Although, and I don't want to sound cynical here, many of these companies do get a tax break because supposedly they donated this equipment. So this is the situation. Coming now the new students that go in and they try to work with this equipment, and the goal of Engineering World Health and the work that we've been doing is to actually try to fix this equipment and get it work. And the experience is transformative from a student's perspective. And even though I've been doing this work mostly from the US, one of the goals right now is to set something up with BSMS and University of Brighton and Sussex so that we can do it from campus here. And the beauty of this engagement is that it really brings together engineers and medical students. They work together, they provide feedback to each other, and they get something to work. For example, and I can spend a whole talk on these experiences, but this is a lamp that wasn't working. And there was a woman who needed a cesarean ASAP, and there was no light in the surgical room. So the students were given a short amount of time to figure out a way to fix this lamp, and the quid pro quo, if you will, that's a joke, but the reward was that they would get to see and witness the surgery, of course, with the mother's consent. And for students to come back with that experience, to have on the spot made a difference, they can actually, it's a tangible effect. It's something that they can see what their expertise, what their learning was actually put into action on the spot. And again, with infant warmers, I did not have enough space because I need to move on to other things that the talk is about. But we're talking about hospitals that nurses bring their own soap. And there is, as you can see here, there was one, I didn't put it, but one of these students, and this is the students who fixed the infant warmer, when he offered to fix it, the nurse said, well, I'm not sure because I don't have money. So the nurse somehow thought that she would be charged and she would pay out of pocket if we fix the infant warmer. So she was in tears when we actually fixed, one of the students, when I say we, it's actually, all this work is the work done by students through Engineering World Health, which recently, by the way, was integrated with Engineers Without Borders, which I see as a great thing because now there will be even more investment and effort put into it. So this is the work done again with EWH in Rwanda. The reason I put these photographs for you is when you think about global work, when you think about scaling, whatever your research, whatever your invention, whatever your passion is, the reward is immense, and it's not only about the technical part, it's not only about the clinical part, it's also the cultural exchange, how it brings people together. This is a student who had never left the US, and his first trip was to Rwanda. That was his first time at the airport and the first thing. So for him, you can see the joy in him and the children there. So again, it's an exchange. And here, I put this here because this photo, it's the creativity of students. So we were at a children's hospital in somewhere Rwanda, and there was nothing there for us to fix because there was nothing there. I mean, there's no other way for me to say this. But what we realized was a lot of these children, parents come to visit with the siblings. So we thought, how about we create a playground for them to lighten up the place. So these are two medical students. I can't remember, this has been a while, but I think she was from Harvard and she was from Stanford, but I may not have this right. But these are medical students. And what they did was actually physical work when we built this playground for the children. So again, it's not about always fixing something technical or something. It's about giving back to the community in any way possible. So now I will move to what I do as a researcher. So as Agatha mentioned, my area of research is MRI. I am a biomedical engineer, but I am a physicist, and my expertise is in MRI physics. So most of my work is actually in functional MRI and looking at perfusion. So the work that I do, even though MRI is one of those most versatile and more feasible in a sense of safety and patient comfort, etc., my focus has been measuring blood flow in the brain and looking at Alzheimer's disease, looking at stroke and other diseases, but also applications in neuroscience in understanding how the brain works. For example, I didn't put this in the talk, but today I had a meeting with an expert on campus at BSMS who really likes to know what happens to the brain when the mind wanders. So I did not know how much science or neuroscience and psychology is behind the mind wandering and what is the age effect of mind wandering. What does it mean? So I could even ask you right now, can you define what mind wandering? How is it different from contemplating, from when your mind wanders on purpose, or when you want to focus on something, but the mind wanders? So we were trying to actually set up an MRI experiment that we could study what happens in the brain while the mind wanders, but if the task gets more difficult. Does it mean that we focus more? Do we give up at some point, etc.? So these are the type of questions that we can ask from a neuroscience perspective. And as I said, from a more clinical perspective, it's applications when the blood flow is a parameter that could be a biomarker or affected by disease, or also could be the target of whatever the therapy is. So this is my background. And again, I can have a whole talk on this alone, but the point of this talk was to see how we can bring this cutting edge technology, one of the most powerful diagnostic tools that we have, and scale it globally. And why is that important, and why should we invest in that? So I've been in this field for 3 decades now. I have been going to several conferences. We have one international conference that we go every year and many other conferences. And it became very clear that there was an entire continent that was missing, be it in representation of researchers and students and medical experts, but also representation in diseases. And this is from the website of CAMERA. I will talk about CAMERA in a second, but historically, the research in Africa is being driven by communicable diseases and neonatal and maternal. And actually turns out that now non-communicable diseases, basically the diseases that are also the center of attention and focus in research in the global north, are becoming now very prevalent in Africa. So we're now at a crossroads when it becomes very important to translate the research into, and by translate, I mean geographical translation, but also learn from these from the setting of these diseases in a different environment, in different genetic makeup, etc. So, for example, this is an article that you can read from the title. It says Africa is suffering a silent crisis of stroke. So stroke is really rising in Africa. And again, 1 in 2 Black African women will die from breast cancer. There are no diagnosis. There's no MRI, breast MRI or CT for that matter in many places in Africa. So to that effect, we came together as a society of magnetic resonance researchers to basically start tackle this problem that we have in having research, education, and training and translating clinical findings into this new cohort. Well, not new cohorts, but in the cohorts that have not been getting any attention whatsoever in decades. So it started with Uduna Anazodo, who is a Nigerian-Canadian researcher, MR physicist, does both PET and MRI at McGill University in Canada. And she brought together people from all over the world and said, we need to do something, we need to get organized. And we founded the Consortium for Advancement of Magnetic Resonance Consortium for Advancement of Magnetic Resonance Imaging Education and Research in Africa. We spent some time coming up with a good acronym. And again, there's lots of information that you can find on the website. So the first thing that we did was to have a survey that was distributed mostly in Northern Africa, but in English-speaking Africa, there is one of the limitations is that we didn't get many of the French-speaking countries. We're working on it right now, but to see where are the MRIs? Do they have MRIs? And I'm not quite sure what your background is, and I'm assuming that there is a variability in background, but MRI scanners come at different field strength. Basically, that's the magnetic field. And just a rule of thumb, 1 Tesla, which is how we measure the magnetic field, it's about 1 million pounds. So, and that on top of maintenance and many other accessories that need to come. Helium, it works on helium, so you have to buy helium, you have to buy coils. So it's a really expensive, as you probably know, even from a patient's perspective, it's an indispensable tool. It has revolutionized healthcare across the globe, but it's an expensive tool. So we wanted to see how available was this across Africa. So we ran a survey, and so you'll see that 3 Tesla, which is now the most common scanner in the global north, is in the last 10 years, it started to grow in numbers, and it's it's essentially non-existent. You have some in South Africa and in some of the more developed areas, but it's the 1.5 Tesla, which many of us, I was actually talking to a junior faculty a while back, and he said he wanted to do this method that we have developed. He wanted to do it at 1.5 Tesla because it's never done. And I had to remind him that I had done it at 1.5 Tesla. I started my career at Columbia University on the 1.5 Tesla machines. So, and we did actually a study on Alzheimer's disease. One of the first study in looking at the blood flow in Alzheimer's patients was done at 1.5, but it's basically old technology as we move into higher fields because we can afford it. And then there are lower than 1 Tesla, and you can see that these scanners that do not provide high-level quality imaging, they are more prevalent in the continent. I will not go into detail. This is from a paper. This is the title of the paper. I think I put the reference in the next slide, so you can look at the paper, or I can go over it with you if you want to. But training is also a problem, and there is no access to training. And we looked at it from the radiologist's perspective, and we looked at it from the radiographers, the people who run the scanners on a daily basis. Again, we looked at the utility of the scanner. So once they have them, can they use them? How? And again, there are many issues that come up with maintaining a scanner. Some of you may know that the scanner is always on. There is no such a thing as turning off the power on an MRI scanner. The only time that happens is when there is a problem. And many places will have like a note that say the field is always on to remind people to not come close with pieces of metal. It's not like at the end of the day we say, okay, we're done with our job, we will turn off it stays there all night. Again, unless something is wrong or on purpose, the scanner is being decommissioned, it is always on, and it requires a lot of power, which again, electrical power being a huge issue across Africa. So even though some places may have the scanner, they actually cannot keep it working the whole time because they have power outages all the time. So as I said, we did a pretty thorough study to identify, pinpoint what the problems are so that we can develop a framework of how we address these problems. So equipment, I already measured, they are expensive to set up, they are expensive to buy. Even when they are donated without manuals, without anybody here helping to set them up or help with training people. There is reliance on power, and that's another issue. And of course, personnel, the brain drain, the lack of biomedical engineer, the lack of even the medical expertise in MRI, in radiology. So, and of course, funding, it's not available. So these are the things that we're starting now to address in a global scale. So this is something went wrong here, but bear with me. So one of the main solutions is, and I will talk a little bit about this, to invest in what's called low field MRI. Remember that I said the higher the field, the higher the cost. So now work from Leiden University, from MIT and other places, it's been truly a groundbreaking innovation. And I don't use those words lightly. So, and I know they get overused all the time. I truly mean groundbreaking work in now using low field MRI, which hopefully with the help of AI and machine learning techniques will get us to provide diagnostic images that are, I don't want to say as valuable as high field, but they are really good for certain diseases like stroke and other diseases when the spatial resolution may not be as crucial as for some other applications. So one other solution is to digitize radiology and improve data management, which again, is another issue. And of course, training programs for MRI personnel. This is close to my heart and very important. And increase always funding. Funding never hurts. So just to give you a bit of a sense of what we're talking about, this is the true size of Africa. So when we say there is an urgent need to really do something in this continent that has been neglected for a long time, we're talking geographical expansion that is beyond of some of the largest countries that you may, or even continents that you may be familiar with. So we're thinking of low field MRI as a potential equalizer, basically, again, equalizing the field. And there is work done by Leiden University, Andrew Webb, and Jones of Bulongo, who are, and Jones is in Uganda, Andrew is in Leiden, and this is a low field scanner. You're looking at it, that it's most of the elements are 3D printed. So they go into this modular form into Uganda, and then you have Jones lab with the biomedical engineers that put together this scanner that can actually produce images like this. I mean, this is not, if you went online and look at 3 Tesla images, this is not the best image, but it is pretty impressive when you think that it's coming from a scanner that can be, I didn't put this and now I'm regretting, can be literally biked around and I say this because I have a photo of Andrew Webb from Leiden University, Leiden Medical School, that he took this scanner, the back of his bicycle, and biked from one town to another. And now, I mean, again, you have to be fit, but it's so much different than actually getting a 1.5 Tesla or a 3 Tesla. You probably have seen an MRI scanner. It is not even close to thinking about moving it in terms of portability. It also has very minimal demands of power. So it addresses the electrical power. You can really plug it into a socket in a room. A GP can have it and plug it on. It doesn't have to have the power requirement. It doesn't need helium. And some of you may have heard about the helium shortage that we had, and it is a concern in terms of sustainability. So this is a huge area of research and something that we're truly thinking as a potential equalizer and not only for Africa, and I would get to that in a second. So again, look at this in terms of a stroke. You can see now that this image would easily detect something like that. And we're working on to breast imaging. The idea might even be that you have a low field that is sort of specialized for leg, for torso, there is a lot of work and invention that is going. And of course, the hope is that we will actually get this with some clinical translation and FDA approved. There is one version of low field, and that's hyperfine, that has been FDA approved, in the US. And you can search more. It is, so it's the field that it's moving forward. Now, another thing that we are working on is research and training. This is the first ever conference in medical imaging to happen in Africa. And this was in Accra, Ghana, 2 years ago. We had another one in Tanzania last year, and hopefully we'll have another one in Tunisia this September. So these are, you can tell people that cross the borders, but we all have crossed the borders here because there are people from many, I can't remember now, probably from 15, 16 countries in Africa. This is Professor Webb, this is Andrew Webb, Jones, and Professor Godwin Ogbole, who we even invented a handshake. This is why they're laughing, because now we have our own handshake. And there is a vision here for training and research. One of the narratives that we are trying to change, and I've done conscious work with my students with this, because there is this idea in the global north that we're going there to help. And I think we need to change that narrative. We're going there, by there, whatever there is, to collaborate, to learn, and to exchange ideas. So that narrative has to change. My experience in Africa and in Latin America has been, because they have so little, creativity and invention are impressive. It's something that we have become a bit complacent because it's easy. We can just buy parts. So that's how we need to look at it. And again, together, especially now with internet, you can look at what we're doing right now. I feel like I'm talking to myself because I don't get to see any of you. So this is the work that we're doing in terms of research and training. A little bit more, this is not light, it looks light, but we're also coming up with ideas how to raise funds. So one idea that we collaborated with Isagus Toshe, who is an artist and a fashion designer. She's done work with President Obama's inauguration. She's done, I should have put the name. Maybe I should have put the name. Somehow I didn't, because it's worth seeing all the work that she does. But we had this idea of how about she makes dresses for us, but the prints are with different MRI modalities. And then we had a fashion show, really with a runway, right? That's what it's called, with a runway. We invited, this was in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam. We invited people from the government, from various embassies, from industry, And we thought we wanted to educate them about the importance of MRI through art and through these dresses. So as somebody would be walking down the runway, we had the MC describe what they were looking at. So they could be looking at somebody, like I think this one is really an image of stroke, but they would also learn about different modalities. Like say, this is like you can almost see the stroke here. So this is an image and I can just see the stroke, but also different modalities. Say this is an anatomical image. This right here, this is me helping around, but this right here is a perfusion image. So we taught them the different things that MRI can do. Now, I want to bring something up here and say, when we say scaling or democratizing MRI or medical imaging or so what happened here is, what do we mean? What does that mean for high income countries? Look at this. This is the distribution of MRI per million people across some of the global north, but including Japan and I think there's China here. I'm not sure. I can't really see. But Japan is one of the countries with the highest number of MRI scanners per million people, followed by the United States. So the United States is somewhere here, and the United Kingdom, by the way, is down here. And you've probably seen many many articles about NHS and how long is the wait for an MRI. So I had this idea of working with people from public policy. Does this low field, this technology, does this have a place for places like the United States and the UK? The UK, we just finished the study with a medical student. So you know that medical students at BSMS take a year to do research. So I did research with one student who basically looked at accessibility in MRI accessibility in the United Kingdom. And we did also, for the US, I have the data. I don't have the data for the UK yet. So our question was, are there disparities in MRI in one of the richest countries in the world? And does it impact certain populations more than others? We really want to do these as well, but we're not there yet. So we did a survey and we also looked at private and public data. The problem with the US is because of the way the healthcare works, there's a lot of private data that we spend $10,000 just to get access to one of the data sets. It's much easier in the UK because these are mostly public information, so at least it's free to get. And for those of you who want to get into medical school and think about it in a global sense, this is a graph that really hurts my sensibilities. It's a really tough graph to look at. So we focus a lot on aging and Alzheimer's disease and dementia, as we should, and I'm not advocating for us not to do so. The burden is on the patients themselves, on the family, on the healthcare. That being said, many of the communities don't even get there, as the average age is much lower. So a lot of this research goes toward helping one community when we leave behind many other communities that actually might have other diseases that we need to focus and look and need access to healthcare and access to diagnostic tools like MRI. So what we found, and I'm not going to go into too much detail of this, but we found that in the main things that MRI is, let me just do this so that I don't, in the main things that MRI gets applied, which is breast cancer, prostate, lung, and ischemic stroke, education, income, race, and geography had an impact in accessing and in the diagnosis. Insured versus uninsured, we didn't find it through literature. This is just the literature review. Then we went to, there is an app that you can access, it's called Policy Map. And we look at percent of people of color. So you can see where people of color in the United States, the more purple this is, the higher the density. on top of this map, we actually laid out the density of the MRI scanners. And now a story emerges here. Now, it's a bit unfair to really see a correlation or causality here because, as you know, the big cities also tend to be on the coast. So statistically speaking, this starts getting a bit complicated, but there is a story to be told here by just looking at this map. And we did something similar with percent poverty. So we looked at poverty data as per the government's definition, and we overlaid the distribution of MRI scanners. And again, a story emerges. So I don't think I have much time to go into detail. And again, you will have this, you can read through this, but this was a graph that I really by hand went through the entire data set and started to look at the poverty rate. So I added all the zip codes in the US and where the poverty rate was between 1 to 10 and then 10, 15 and so on. And then I went and counted the number of scanners. And this was quite unexpected. Even though I knew we would see an effect, this was quite unexpected. It basically says that if you're poor, you barely or you do not have access to an MRI. So why is this important? Because now we constantly think of helping over there, but now we can start thinking of this technology like low field and AI, etc., as a target for areas within the global north that also need it. So as in terms of a conclusion for us, our conclusion was that people of color seems to be the biggest demographic factor influencing MRI access, but also that poverty is a massive variable. So there is official poverty and there is I can't remember what SPM stands for, but basically if you look at if you calculate the poverty based on the data now, official poverty, by the way, in the United States is defined by how much food you can get with the salaries from, I can't remember, it's a very weird way, and I should know this better, but I don't, of defining poverty. And if you look at real data, you'll see that especially for children, with the exception of children, all the other cohorts come up as way more poor than the government will show. And you can see here that we get a big effect in this population. Now, again, for aspiring medical students here, I want to conclude this talk with this photo that was taken from Lesbos, Greece. This is my dear friend, Lenny Parker, who was a pediatrician. He's retired now. He and his wife, Ellen, were vacationing in Greece when this father was in distress because the baby was having, he thought the baby's heart was arrhythmic, the baby was going to die. I mean, the man was in visible distress. And Lenny not having anything, there's no hospital, there's nothing and I don't want to get into the politics of it. There are not even buses to take them to a facility, a medical facility. So Lenny takes a straw, and this always wells me up, and starts listening to the baby's heart and look at the baby's feet and tells the father that the baby's fine, the baby's going to be fine. And the reason I put it here is there are solutions everywhere. This is part of the training, should be not, well, now you have all the equipment and here is your MATLAB and Python. I think in training and education, especially in medicine and in engineering, we need to start thinking of creative ways in a situation like this. So I don't know how fast I went or how slow I went, but I will stop here and I will, any questions that you have?
Iris, thank you so much for that talk. That was that was so fascinating. And yeah, that image at the end of that baby and your colleague Lenny, that's incredible. And I'm sure will be really inspiring for a lot of the people who are listening. Yeah, I just want to say what kind of an incredible career you've had and journey and just really amazing to hear about that all that creativity and resilience that's possible. So thank you so much for your talk. We have some questions in the chat, so I can ask you some of those. So Mohammed has asked about whether MRI and fMRI are similar, and maybe you could talk a bit about how they're
Yes.
similar or
Yeah.
different.
So it's the same scanner. And usually MRI is either an umbrella term, basically including fMRI, or it's meant as anatomical structure MRI, when we just take a very nice picture of your brain. And I mean, I can take pictures of like 1 millimeter resolution, etc. And functional MRI is the same scanner, but we use slightly different what we call sequencing, which means that we change the timing of the radio frequency and the gradient, etc. And this gets technical, so that we can capture processes and we can capture the blood. For example, when I do this, there is a part in my primary motor cortex that needs more blood. Why? It needs more oxygen so that it can have more energy to do. Like right now, probably many areas in the brain for me are elevated because, I'm a bit anxious about the talk. I need to focus on what I'm saying. So if I were doing this in the scanner, I can use fMRI, which usually means bold, but we also use perfusion MRI as a functional to just look at the changes in blood flow. And I would add, even though the most known are MRI and fMRI, you can have spectroscopy, which looks at metabolites. So you can look at just lactate in the brain and forget everything else. And there are also diffusion when you look at the white matter tracts. So and some of these are now recently grouped into what's called physiological MRI. So again, same scanner, expertise changes a little bit because some people get more expert in one field than the other. The statistical analysis and the processing is different, but as I said, the MRI tends to be the umbrella term, and then it has really different pockets and different clinical applications.
Okay, thank you. That was really helpful. Um, so we've also got a question from Daniela. Daniela's asked, do you think something that is limiting progress in neuroscience is that there are so many variables when the experiments are performed?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Right. I want to answer this in the least cynical way. I want to answer this in a yes, but we can figure those all out. And there's a part of me that goes, we may never be able to dissect all of this. And again, I go back to the talk that I had with Professor Winchell today, who is looking at wandering and said, we can't even define what mind wandering is, right? We can't even say, because it may mean different things for different people. So, and the only way for us to know is to ask somebody, did your mind wander? And they will say yes, but it may mean something different. So that's a fantastic question. And I don't want to limit the answer to, oh, give up because we won't be able to. We can build models that are inclusive of different parameters. And again, there is a school of thought that says the brain will never be able to understand the brain, right? It's our brain. That gets philosophical. And I don't know how many of the audience are familiar with Professor Anil Seth's work on consciousness. I highly recommend his book called Being You. He works, he's at BSMS. He's done some MRI studies, but his focus is on consciousness. And there are different schools of thought there about what it means. And will we ever be able to understand it? Will we be able to really describe what it is and also maybe even measure it? So excellent question, very open answer.
Fantastic. Thank you, Iris. I can send a link when I email everyone after the after the webinar. I can send a link to that book that you recommended as well. So
Okay.
hopefully that will be helpful. Um, Salma asks, how do you think young medical students can become more proactive in their contribution to resolve the issues in access to MRIs locally and globally?
Yes. Excellent question also. I am very impressed with the questions. It's making me realize that the world is in good hands. We're good. We're fine. Uh, I don't know that it is yet embedded into the system. I'm hoping that in 10 years from now, it will be part of the medical training that will address exactly that question. I have to say, in many ways, BSMS has awareness in this. It has a lot of global work that I don't know that, again, it's embedded within the training and education, but at least on campus, there is awareness. There are people who are doing excellent work. So I'm afraid at this level, the initiative will have to come from the students, but there are many, many opportunities. And my advice would be start making these connections across borders. You'd be amazed of how much you can do, how much you can learn, how much you can contribute, and start when you're a student. So there are ways to connect. I can help, other people can help on campus, outside. Now with internet, you can find connections. I'm going to Nigeria in July to connect with the Department of Radiology there. Again, here, if there is a medical student at BSMS, I can put in touch and it's interested in radiology, we can start creating these connections. So don't wait until it becomes part of the institution, etc., because that's going to take a while. It will happen. I'm confident that it will happen, but it's not there yet.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Iris. I mean, I was really struck, in your talk about how much you're talking about people coming together from all around the world and, and having to be, like you said, proactive and having to be brave. I mean, I was thinking about how, you were that number one visa. I mean,
Right.
that's incredible, but, it must have taken a lot of bravery to be like the first person to do that. So,
Just on the side, I gave a talk again in Ghana, and I said, I always put that because I feel that's my claim to fame. I think I'll be 90 years old and say, I was the first person. And then I was introduced to this woman who's a clinician, who is the first woman to have done medical school in Ghana and had the Department of Radiology. So I was so humbled. And I thought, yes, there are firsts all over the world, and there will be more. And I think we need to have the initiative until they become so common that we don't even have to put them on slides anymore.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Thank you. We've got another question from Yafyat, which is how effective is the use of low field MRI compared to high field to diagnose a disease? And can we use low field MRI just as much as high field MRI diagnosis for any disease? I guess that's kind of asking, are there specific conditions or diseases where it won't pick it up?
We're not there yet. We're at the beginning. The data is very promising, but it's not replacing high field. It may at some point be a quick diagnostic tool that it will, at least from the perspective again of the global north, it could be that your GP will have a low field and do a quick assessment and say, oh, you need to have a follow-up. Right now, it's done mostly for hydrocephalus, which is a disease that needs to be addressed in Africa. There is a lot of work done in stroke, but we're not there to say there is a lot of work done by Denny Alexander at I think he's at King's or Imperial. I think he's at King's. Basically, AI will have a huge impact here when you can do the learning from the high field data. And then that way, when you get the low field images, there will be the AI will be able to basically increase the diagnostic power. Hyperfine has done some impressive work in this. Again, I'm a bit wary, and I know this is going to be publicly put somewhere on YouTube, so I have to be careful, but I am wary of platforms that are not open source. So that's why I am an advocate of the work that is done at Leiden University Medical Center by Andrew Webb, and also with us at BSMS, when the whole idea is to make these things open source. So it's a huge area of research. We're not there. It might take years, but it's definitely worth of investment. And by the way, if any of you is interested, we have a low field lab on at BSMS. There's been an investment on campus. We are collaborating with Leiden, and we have some nice images to show. So there will be, as just to go, there will be some areas again like stroke, hydrocephalus that will be the first ones. Are we into fMRI with low field? Not quite. But that's why we have all these students now that will push things forward.
Well, fantastic. That sounds like some really good opportunities for kind of further development. Wonderful. Um, uh, Nuha has asked, what are the biggest challenges in making low field MRI more widely available? What is stopping the faster adaptation in low field MRI technology?
One is spreading the word and gaining the confidence of clinicians, because again, they are so used to these pretty pictures that it will take some time for them to see the diagnostic value. And right now it's in research phase. The moment that it gets, we get the FDA approvals or the CE approvals, it's in Europe. And the moment that the diagnostic value is validated, I think it will, because the price is quite inexpensive. I mean, we're talking hyperfine, I think is 300 or 400,000, which is already too much for Africa. But with 50, 60, 70,000, you can buy the other systems that are giving fantastic images. So I think right now it's more to prove its clinical value, because otherwise you can literally, if you come and visit our center on campus, you will see it's there in the office. You can push it like this. You can put your hand in it and acquire images. So it's portable, it's inexpensive. The thing is, are the images reliable? And this is the beginning. There is another group, for those who are interested, Ed Wu in Hong Kong, who's done some fantastic work on accelerating the clinical applications of low field MRI. So stay tuned would be my answer.
That is a good answer, I think, for everyone who's listening to the talk, if they're interested in going into medicine, stay tuned. It's definitely good advice. I think we're nearly coming to the end, Iris. So maybe just a final question. But there's one which hopefully is quite nice. There's a question which is what has inspired you and what keeps you motivated in this field?
You're right. This is a good question that I'm not sure I can articulate it. I
Mm.
think there are like two parts of me. I love research, but sometimes I think that that's a selfish part of my brain because I just love doing research. And I think I make up for it with teaching and training and getting engaged in this other part. So to be able to get both of these connected now somehow, it is something that makes me very happy and very excited, and something that I hope to continue to do for a long time. So I think constantly asking yourself, why am I doing this? Never give up on the things that give you direct pleasure, that give satisfaction for your mind, be it also salary, if that's the case. Whatever it is, hold on to that one because it will keep motivating you. But then thinking, I think you also reach, and the audience is too young probably, but you reach a part in your career when you say, what's the meaning of this all? What have I really tangibly, sure, there is another paper with a p-value of this and that, but what have I done that I can say this person did something because I helped? And I think combining these two parts, altruistic and selfish, if you will, I mean, they are oversimplifications. If you can manage to combine those, that would be the best thing to keep you motivated moving forward at any point in your career.
Wow. Thank you so much, Iris, and thank you again, as I said, for just a really fascinating talk. I learned so much.
Thank you.
So I'm sure our audience did too. It's a shame we don't have, more time for questions. I can see some really, really interesting questions in the
Please
in
do not hesitate to contact me directly, and I would go and have a coffee with whoever wants to. I can show you the MRI. I can take a picture of your brain if you want. So anything, just contact me, and because this is what we're here for. So
Wow, amazing. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Iris. So thank you also to the audience. Yeah, just some really excellent questions to like really generate some really fantastic conversation. So thank you for that. So that kind of brings us to the end of our webinar for tonight. As I said, this has been recorded and we'll be publishing this, so anyone who's watched it who wants to kind of come back and re-explore some of these really interesting questions, you'll be able to do that soon. Look out for my email. I'll send you any follow-up links, and also I'll give the audience details of our next lecture for next month too. So thank you again,
thanks
Iris.
for having me. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, and thanks to the audience. And have a good evening, everyone. Bye
Bye,
bye.
everyone. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.